Welcome to the Movie Heaven, Movie Hell podcast extra. I'm Simon Aitken,
And I'm
and with
and
me,
I'm Keith
oh,
Eyles. and we've rehearsed, as you can see. Or here,
yeah,
sorry.
we might get this right one
Yeah.
day. So we've been talking about this for a bit, and finally it's here. I hope you've done your homework. We're going to talk about our very first short films, which in my case is the short film Firepower.
Yeah, and in my case is a short called Overpass.
Indeed. So we have both watched each other's film, even though we probably haven't before.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I watched yours, in fact, today, and I hadn't seen it before. But yeah,
Yes, I can say the same thing as well. So I thought the best way to do it is if maybe we start off asking each other a question. So, Keith, watching the film, it felt that there was it was very much like a lot of short films I've seen, especially around that time, because funny enough, we made our first short films at the same time, 99.
oh right, okay,
And
yeah.
um, did you have much say over, say, the music and the editing? Because it felt kind of, I have to say, I wasn't a big fan of the music in it.
Oh right, okay.
There was way too much of it, and it just kind of that kind of kind of perky, pinky kind of thing where I don't think that was kind of what you were after, or was it what you were after?
Right, okay. Well, I suppose to give it all a little bit of context, it's the way this came around was I'd already mentioned about film school, living in America, and I'd graduated all of that, and that was all done with. Um, what I did then was I actually got a job working at the college and the film program. What happened was one of the ways I could legally earn money whilst I was out there was to work on campus. So what I did is I got my we had 3 production trucks at the college. We had an electric production truck. We had a grip production truck, which also towed the generator, and we had a camera stroke production truck, which had a dark room and things of that nature in it. So one of the things I did is they trained me, and I got my commercial driving license when I lived out there. So what that meant was I could drive to the various sets, the various films that we shot, and sort of got paid, for being there on education through doing the driving to and from set. So
Can I ask, did you get paid a lot?
no, I mean it was kind of like a by the hour, and it was fairly minimum wage, but hey, it helped. You know
Right.
what I mean? It was, and plus I did a scholarship thing as well, where I put in some extra credit hours to get some of my international tuition reimbursed. But that's a long story that I don't want to bore you with now.
I just wanted to ask, because there is always that misconception that when you're working over in the States on a film, that you get paid very well for even doing a very menial job on a film.
Yeah.
So I was just curious to know if it was the case at this
Now
time.
this was essentially an on-campus job, but like I said,
Yeah.
the beauty was, they obviously paid for me to get my commercial driver's license and all that stuff, and I had to be there anyway, so I may as well drive and get paid to be there. So anyway, so I'd done all of that, and I'd graduated the film program, and that was over. And what happened was, I really wanted to direct something. I wanted to get on and make something. Had a guy, I'd done a lot of crew positions at this point, had worked on a lot of stuff which we discussed in previous podcasts, and I wanted to shoot something. And what Ralph would often do would be, between the feature projects, we'd do a short. All right.
Yeah.
So there was a window of opportunity that he said to me. It wasn't a big window. It was just like a couple of weeks of prep and a couple of days or nights of shooting. but there was a window, and he said, look, if you want to do it, you can use the new class. I was the class of 98. I could use the class of 99, yeah, to be my crew on this. And the thing is, I always I always say this when I talk about making films. It's when you've got no money or whatever, it's the 3 L's. So it's location, logistics, and lunch. Are the three things that you usually have to spend some money on, right? So
Yeah.
essentially, I got the use of all the equipment at the college. These 3 production trucks with all that comes with them, and the use of the class, which was about 30 people, I think, approximately. But obviously, I had to feed everyone, and I had to pay for all the film and the associated costs. So
Yeah.
what happened was, I'd done one of the shorts that I'd done previously that year, that I'd first AD'd on. The DOP on that was an Australian guy. He was a bit older, but we had quite a banter. There was the whole, he was the Brit and I was the Brit and he was the Aussie. And, there was a little bit of banter going on. And he had a very good attitude, a sort of, can-do attitude. And we helped this director make this short film and got on quite well. So I spoke to him about it, and he said, look, if you want to do this, he said, I will DOP for you free of charge if you agree to AD a project that I've got further down the track. Okay. So we came up with that agreement, that gentleman's agreement, and he agreed to come on board to light this for me.
Can I just ask, did you go on to first AD his projects?
I did. Yeah, that's a whole nother story. But yes, I did.
Okay.
So no, I kept my end of the bargain. As I would. But this guy was called Jonathan Nixon, and sadly, over the years, I've lost contact with him. He lives in LA, or last I knew,
Yeah.
he lived in LA. But he knew his stuff in terms of lighting, old school DOP stuff. He knew, right? So what I
Yeah.
did is I obviously I paid for myself to get out to film school and whatever. I think, to be fair, my mum and dad helped me a little bit with some money to make this film. I could
Yeah.
only afford 10 rolls of film, and I bought it was
Oh, okay.
Kodak Vision stock. Okay, it was new at the time. The Vision stock. It was quite good at working in low lighting
Oh, right.
conditions.
I remember the Vision stock films. Yeah.
It was 16 mil, so obviously I shot this 4:3, ratio or whatever, 16 mil film, and I had access. This was shot on an Aeroflex SR3 camera. I had 2 of them.
Yeah.
And the DOP brought along. He also had some Aton lenses and things of that nature.
I just want to say that I remember the Arri SR3, which was like the newer of the cameras, because a lot of the productions I worked on 16mm had all been SR2s.
Right.
If anything, the SR2 was generally the kind of workhorse of 16mm. But yeah, it's very nice to be working with a newish camera.
Yeah. I mean, at the time, this was, as I said, the college was fairly well equipped, and
Hmm.
I had access to that. The big issue was going to be, what the fuck was I actually going to film? Because at this point, I'd done the film course, which, as I said, was largely technical. It was largely about working practices on set and the nuts and bolts of film production. There was a little bit of pre-production stuff involved and a little bit of post-production, but largely it didn't deal with development or distribution or any of that sort of thing. I'd also done a production management course, which was a side course that I'd done at the time, and I'd done a basic script writing course. I obviously went on to do more of that. But so I had to come up with something, and I only had a very small window to do this. So, and at the time, I didn't feel particularly confident about writing anything myself. I have obviously since done that on all of my other films that I've made.
Can I just ask, because I did notice that was it this film that made you decide to write your own stuff?
Right. Well, what it was, one of my thoughts was often directors, and I mean, when I talk about directors, I'm talking about, working directors in the industry. I mean, with exceptions, with the Christopher Nolans and whatever, but often a director is hired to direct somebody else's work. I mean, we've talked about it here with Hitchcock, even though he gets, involved in the actual writing process. It's obviously usually an adaptation of a book or a play or something, right? Well, in this case, what had happened is, I think I mentioned on a previous podcast, we did a year of theatre studies before we did the film program. It was part of the structure.
That's right. Yeah.
And I actually worked at the theatre that they had on campus at the time anyway. And one of the classes we did was Intro to Theatre. And what it meant was, one of the projects we had to do one term is, we were in groups of 4, and we had to essentially, somebody had to write a one-act play, a 10-minute or 15-minute play or whatever, that we would actually put on as a production, but only with 4 people, right? So essentially, someone would direct it, and then the other 3 would act in it and help, with the general production before we put it on. And there was a girl in the class that had written this short comedy one-act piece called Overpass. And interestingly, when we made it, it was my first ever go at acting at all. I actually had to play Nick, the driver, the main character in it. And then there was a girl who played Laura, who was the passenger stroke girlfriend, and then the guy we pick up, the hitchhiker, Max. There was another guy. So we'd done that as part of the theatre program, and it was there. And I thought, you know what, I need to do something that's contained. I need to do something that I can literally shoot over 2 nights. I only had, as I said, 10 reels of film. So, straight away I was thinking about shoot ratio, and I could probably only make something about 15 minutes long, right? So what I did is, I went and spoke to the girl that wrote this, and I said, look, could I buy your script off of you, or would you give me permission to adapt this into a film? And she was actually quite flattered that I chose it and wanted to let me do it. So I took it, and I had to adapt it slightly, because in her version there was quite a bit of mention of Disney, and I thought, oh God, I don't want any of those problems. So straight away I had to change things. But also,
why did you think that mentioning Disney there would be problems?
I wanted something that if I made it and I could put it in festivals and whatever without having any issues with because the Disney thing was referring to a T-shirt, which meant you had to have Mickey Mouse on the T-shirt, and I thought, I don't even want to go there. So I came up with something generic about Daytona racing and all this sort of stuff.
But you didn't think that Daytona racing might have?
No, we double checked that. It was fairly generic, and it wasn't an actual official company or anything. So we got round that issue. So essentially, I adapted this script slightly to work for film more, and basically, I had a DOP that was agreeing to light it and work on it with me. I had a crew, which was lovely. I mean, I was spoilt on this. I had I had to feed them all and stuff, but I had a 30-man crew. I had 3 production
had a very
trucks.
Big crew.
Yeah,
I was really surprised when I saw the end credits.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, obviously, there were people that didn't pull their weight or whatever on it, but essentially I had all the departments with everybody doing a single job within that department. So
how did you feel? Did you think you did well as a director working with a big crew?
Well, I mean, I got away with a lot because I was this is going to sound really arrogant now, but you have to remember we're talking about well, scarily, like 16 years ago this was, right? And it was, I was in my 20s back then. It was Florida, not LA, so it was still in Florida. And at the time, I was, as a Brit, I was a little bit of a novelty to everyone, meaning, everybody liked the accent and they'd laugh at my stupid British jokes in wit and all this sort of stuff. All of most of which was nicked from Blackadder anyway. But
Oh, okay.
you know, but you know, people kind of wanted to work with me. I'd been the first AD on a lot of stuff, so I'd been a sort of leader, if you like, anyway, with some of these guys, and they
Oh,
were all
okay.
in a year below. So you know, I was one of the veterans. I did kind of work there as well, so I didn't get a lot of trouble, actually. Most people, I mean, you know, it was about being organized and being on my game, and I had to absolutely, you know, take this by the horns and make it work. And you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
two weeks wasn't a lot of prep time, to be honest. I mean, it sounds like a luxury, maybe, but you know, the beauty of it was I had people, I had resources that could go out and do this, and I obviously had access to all of these trucks and all of this equipment and everything as well. So I was on the right side of things. And yeah, we you know we got into pre-production. It was about finding locations. It was about finding a vehicle. I had to go and see if I could borrow a fairly generic looking vehicle. I didn't need, you know, it had to be a four-door sedan type thing to make it work. But you know, it's about that. And very much plan everything. You know, I planned my shots. I did a store. I got an artist. One of the guys in the class was really good at drawing, so I sat down with him for a day, and we created storyboards for everything, the entire film. Um,
Did you stick to the storyboards?
Absolutely, you can. It's weird. You almost look at the storyboards, and it's like the graphic novel of Overpass, quite literally. I mean, yes, I absolutely. This is why I'm quite a stickler about this with other filmmakers nowadays. You know, because I was shooting on film, I had to be absolutely prepared. I could not afford to keep fucking up and doing retakes and all this. I had a very small shoot ratio for this. Um,
Hmm.
so, and then of course, I had to go through the casting process because I had to find actors.
Could I just go back there for a second? Sorry, just to go back to, you know, being. I agree with you. Being prepared is you have to be prepared, but you not weren't you open to sort of maybe the possibility of maybe changing stuff on the day if something else arose?
Oh yeah, I mean, and I did, because like there's a
Okay.
shot, there's one shot in it that, you know, again, it don't mean nothing now, but I was really proud of it at the time, that I sort of saw when I was on set, and I said to the DOP, what I'd really like to do here is see our hitchhiker guy in the door mirror of the car, and then I'd like to rack to the guy stood in front of the car, and then rack focus back to him for his line. Well, there isn't a storyboard of that. That was something that was
Okay.
kind of, I saw when I was setting up on the day. But
Oh, okay. Well, no, it's just from the way you were talking, it sounded like you were very sort of militant about, right, these are the storyboards. This is what we're shooting. We're not shooting anything
well, yeah, I
else.
mean, it,
And
it, it certainly wasn't up for committee. You know,
hmm.
myself and the DOP, and the unit production manager. You know, we had lots of pre-production and sort of heads of department had quite a few meetings leading up to it, and I made sure that everybody had copies of storyboard shot lists. Everybody was on the page and understood. We did a proper location recce, so again, because I worked for the college, I had access to a minivan,
Oh,
which I
right.
could basically throw all of the heads of department in the back of, and we could drive out to this overpass, which it literally was, you know, in on a street, on a, you know, road.
Hmm.
So I had to pay for police and permits and all sorts of fucking stuff, you know, to make that safe and legal. But we went and visited
Yeah.
it in the daytime, so everybody could see in the light, you know, what I wanted to do, and because I chose to set this at night. That was one of the big shocks that the writer found when she finally watched it. Was there was nothing in the script that said it was set at night. It could have been set during the day, because rainstorms happen in Florida all of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it basically took place in a rainstorm, hence why they had to, you know, think. But
But the
but
thing is, well, I knew the sort of the tricks you did to make it look like a rainstorm,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that would not have worked during the day.
No,
In
no.
daylight, those tricks would have just fallen apart. You would have seen right through them.
Yeah, well, there was a couple of things. Obviously, at night time, you could get away with more in terms of what you see and don't see.
Yeah,
Okay, but also because of tonally what I wanted to do with it. I'm not really a comedy. This was a comedy, and I saw it as a sort of black comedy, a dark comedy. Yeah,
yeah,
but that's not really me. I'm more of a thriller type guy. Hitchcock is an influence. So go figure.
yes,
But yeah, so I wanted to make it at night. I wanted it to be dark. I wanted to have thunder and lightning. I wanted to sort of play on those sort of more spooky elements.
right,
Plus, you're absolutely right. From a production point of view, even though night shoots can be difficult on cast and crew, it did mean that we had sort of more control over what we would see or wouldn't see in the dark, and also of course the roads were quieter.
yeah.
There were a number of production reasons as well why it was a good idea to make it at night.
One of them is that you have the characters driving in pouring rain, and of course, you can afford to actually have them driving in
No,
pouring rain.
no,
So
there were no rigs in
no,
this. It was all simulated.
so you had to keep the car stationary. So if it had been daylight, you would have known that the car was stationary. In darkness, there wasn't any way to tell.
Exactly. And I mean, we
Apart from
tried
the fact
tricks.
that your actor was doing a bit of he was doing a bit of driving acting. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Where he's driving straight, yet he keeps moving the steering wheel.
yeah. I mean, I mean, I watch it now, and in retrospect, I mean, bearing in mind this was the first thing I did,
Yes,
but
yeah, yeah.
I cringe like mad because I think it's too long. It
It's
ended
too
up
long.
being about
Yes,
17 minutes long, which is way too long. I mean, everything I've done. I did another film that was then 15, but the last four films I've done, I've always tried to make 10 minutes or less. Yeah.
yes, yeah,
So that was a lesson learned. I mean, it's too long. It's too flabby.
yeah,
And I cringe at quite a lot of things during it. However, I learnt a massive amount by doing this film, and that's what it
yes,
was about. Basically, I wasn't trying to create necessarily a masterpiece. I was trying to work with what I had available and learn, the craft through doing that. I've just realised I've gone on way too long answering a very simple question that you asked me, which I've totally forgot what it was.
I've
Was
forgotten,
it?
but
Um,
no, but the thing is, it's sort of gone into sort of the nuts and bolts of it, and I've been able to ask questions as we've gone along. But I have to say, though, for a first short film, I mean, it wasn't too bad. I
yeah. Well,
mean,
thank you. I
yeah,
mean,
it
I
it
had.
wasn't too bad. I mean, I wasn't too. I thought the guy's accent. I don't know where he's from, Eastern Europe or something.
Yeah, well, that was kind of the idea. You didn't really know where he was from, but he was just supposed to be a bit
I
strange.
mean, I liked the idea of it, and and it was a good concept, and the fact that you shot on 16 mm, it looks good. It did look good, and as I say, you had sort of rain effects and stuff like that in there, and you shot round that pretty well. The only thing I didn't think worked too well was the point of view shot from Max, where you see the actor doing his driving acting.
And the tail lights, yeah, which didn't quite. Yeah, the tail lights didn't quite work. That was one of those
No, because
things.
it did make him look like they were tailgating a car
It
in
did, it did. No,
front.
I didn't quite.
Especially the fact that he was the main actor was not looking at the bloody road.
Yeah,
He kept looking back at Max and
yeah.
stuff, and it's
Well,
just
the
like,
thing is, that's the other thing to sort of point out about how filmmaking's changed as well. And I'm not making excuses here, but this is true.
hmm,
At the time we had a video tap, and for guys that don't know what that is, basically it was a little video camera that would sit on the side of the camera, looking into basically the mirror where you see what the lens is picking up. Okay, and back in the day, these things were literally just really bad, grainy, black and white images that you'd get from it. So
That's
in
right.
terms of
I've done video assist,
yeah,
so
in terms
yeah,
of
yeah.
video assist, my video assist was essentially like a 12-inch black and white monitor, CRT type monitor, yeah. And you know, obviously it didn't pick up the color red because it was black and white, yeah. So things when you were looking through the actual what the camera was seeing,
Yes.
shots like that, they were difficult to tell whether they were working or not, really. And you know, that was one of those things where when it came to the transfer and later the edit, it was one of those things where I was like, I didn't really fucking get what I wanted there, but you know, I had to go with it because I didn't really have any coverage of that because again of my shooting ratio. I couldn't afford to shoot the entire film, the entire 15 minutes from every single angle. I could only do portions of it from certain angles. And obviously, I wanted to make sure I couldn't really afford for the actors to fuck up. So again,
Yeah.
I did it more in bite-sized chunks so that
Did they fuck up?
no, they. I mean, to say a little bit about the actors. Again, we didn't have a lot of time to put out a big casting call for this. Uh, and I did go through a proper audition process and
Yeah.
saw a number of actors, and it was really weird. I mean, the main guy, the guy who played the character Nick, was a guy called Nathan Sears that had actually worked on a previous film at Valencia, and was quite a nice chap and sort of pretty easy to get on with and reliable. And I thought, you know what? It's very much an everyman. It's a bit of a weedy boyfriend role, really. Probably
Yeah.
hence why I was cast as it originally, right? And I obviously didn't want to be in the film. I wanted to just
No.
direct the
Yeah.
film. So I got him to agree to do that. The girl was quite problematic. I saw a hell of a lot of very, very, very attractive and whatever young actresses, but a lot of them, couldn't really act and couldn't really do it. And it was really weird because the girl that I cast actually worked in a coffee bar on campus serving
Right.
coffee. Yeah.
Okay.
And I had no idea. In fact, I've got to give credit to the production manager that I had on it. She went and was, I guess, putting out flyers and whatever to try and get people from the campus, because there was that bit of acting that went on at the college as well to
Yeah.
try, and UCF as well. We approached them for their acting courses. To try and get someone. And she actually was the one who came back to me and said, "Oh, the girl in the coffee bar, the cute redhead, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." And she said, "Well, she wouldn't mind giving it a whirl. She's done some acting." And I was like, "Really?" And all I did was order a latte off this girl for bloody months, and I hadn't even thought of it. And I said, "Well, bring her in and let's try her." And fuck me, within the first, suddenly it was it. I'd found my actress for this. She just worked,
Yeah.
and looked good with the guy and all this. And then the character of Max was an interesting one because this guy, I'll shout out to him, Dave Conley. He was one of the guys. He was one of the older guys on the filmmaking course at the time. But he was actually one of my. He was in the same year as me and had gone through the program. And he actually came up to me and said, "Look, can I audition for this?" And I was like, "Oh, right, okay. I didn't, know you were an actor." And he said a thing that I absolutely agree with and have since concurred with myself. Is he said, "Well, if we want to be filmmakers, we need to try acting at least once, and we need to sort of understand acting and all this." And he said, "Look, please give me a go. I want to have a whirl at this." And so I did. I gave him a go, and regardless of, I mean, the accent was supposed to be weird and ambiguous, and
Yeah.
he looked the part. He kind of pulled it off, and I was happy with him for it, to be honest.
Yeah.
So that was a bit weird that I, cast someone that I'd done a 2-year course with as a as a behind the scenes guy, in my first film. But
Yeah.
I felt he worked and he got it, and you know, he was game for it. And again, I was all about wanting to surround myself with people that had the sort of can do positive attitude, because it was going to be 2 long nights. Believe it or not,
Yeah.
everybody thinks Florida, when they think of Florida, they think of it being really hot and humid. Let me tell you, we filmed this in, I think it was the month of March in 99, and it was
Right.
bloody freezing, absolutely freezing. I mean, it was down below zero. You wouldn't think that of Florida, I know, but
What is it with you, Keith, and night shoots? Because I heard not Driven Insane. Fairview was the
it
same.
was. In fact, Fairview, I mistakenly said in the interview you did with me or whatever that I filmed it in March, but it wasn't. It was actually, it was get this, it was over Valentine's weekend in February.
Oh,
And
Jesus.
again, yeah, that was a cold night shoot. But yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
you could see that.
I,
You could see their breaths and
Yeah, I don't know
everything.
what it is about me and nighttime in cars, but it does kind of. I really need to do something different, I guess. But we'll get on to that. But yeah, so in a nutshell, that's what that was in terms of the production. In terms of the post,
Yeah.
by the time,
This is what I was sort of getting to,
yeah,
because
well,
with the music.
by the time I got, well, okay, I mean, the music is done by a really good friend of mine, who was actually my flatmate at the time in the States, Rodrigo Bermudez. He's Costa Rican. You know, he's a very talented guy. He's one of these guys. He's highly intelligent. He's a really good drummer. He's played for years in bands as a drummer, and he's the sort of guy who used to piss me off. You know, he could pick up any sort of musical instrument and play it. He's one of
Play it.
those,
Yeah.
yeah. Who was on the course with me, and of course, you know, I needed a composer. He wanted to do the music, but in terms of resources, I mean, again, you know, things have moved on a lot with software and everything now. But at the time, he just had a keyboard, a synthesizer keyboard,
Yeah.
yeah. So we were kind of relatively limited in terms of processing power and output that this could do, right? My brief to him on this was, I wanted something. I mean, obviously, he wanted to do as much music as possible in this.
Right.
I wanted something. The direction that I sort of talked to him about with this was, I wanted something that had, and I dare I say it, I know it's cheesy and corny as hell to say this, but I said I wanted to have a sort of Hitchcockian feel on one hand, and I did go there, I'm afraid, but I said
Yeah.
that. But I also said it needed to be slightly, and again, I hate this term, but slightly quirky, because it was a dark comedy. So
Right.
I
Okay.
wanted him to try and, like, for example,
It's a
before,
shame he went more quirky than Hitchcockian.
well, before the reveal of Max the hitchhiker, I wanted that to be quite tense. You know, I wanted that to be real
Mm.
sort of horror movie stuff, and then lighten, you know, with his accent and with his reveal and all this sort of thing. And of course, we had the sort of bickering between them. But you know, Rod's influences are, he's quite old school. He's obviously Herman and whatever, but very much, you know, he's of the John Williams ilk, where he likes proper themes, thematic stuff. I mean, we were talking, I spoke to him not long ago, and we were talking about the composers of now, yeah, the
Yeah.
here and now. You know, the Michael Giacchimos, the people that still work in actual theme tunes rather than, you know, like John Williams does, like Goldsmith did. Oh God,
And
and
James
James
Horner
Horner, who sadly we lost this
passed
week,
away.
which is very sad, very
Yeah.
very sad and very tragic. But you know, of that type. So you know, Rod came up with this theme that runs throughout it, and I knew I was going to have, because I wanted to give everybody credit.
Yeah.
Nowadays I tend to just put the title and then all the credits at the end, but with this we were going to have long end credits anyway, so all the above the line stuff, I wanted to do um, a big credit sequence, and I wanted to show the journey and show the fact, you know, establish the world and where we were on the freeway, and that the
Yeah.
thunderstorm was starting and all this sort of stuff. So he got to write a fairly big piece for that opening.
I didn't mind the opening. I just felt that there was just an overuse of music in the film,
Yeah.
and I was just wondering if that was a conscious choice on your hand, or if it was something that was, maybe put upon you.
Well,
Or
I think I said this once in a podcast that I did with Neil Myers, who's a composer that I use on well, he's done the last 5 films actually of mine.
yeah,
It is it's the one part of the directing process. I think we said this a little bit on the Carpenter podcast as well. It's the one part that I feel that I absolutely have to, that I don't have the creative control on so much because I'm not musical myself. I'm not a musician. I can't read music. I can't
I know,
compose. I can't
but
play
it's
music.
not about that, Keith.
But
It's about how you use the music. It's where you put it, and it's the decisions you make of whether to have music or not to have music.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of music in this. I agree.
Yeah, yeah. It just felt that because it's mostly it's a dialogue piece, that to have this music underneath it all the time just didn't. I just it took away from the acting for me a
I,
bit. It just. But I mean, I think it's just kind of like that kind of. Uh, I think it's just one of those things where a first filmmaker falls into that kind of trap where they have music and they have a score written for it and they go, "We must use it all."
yeah, yeah. I mean,
when when the lesson to be learned is not, there are times and places to have music and not to have
yeah.
music.
I mean, it is. Obviously, it's the last thing in the process, essentially. But
Yeah,
the other
yeah.
thing I will have to say, and even though I'm massively grateful of everybody that worked on this film, way back then and out there, I had a lot of sound issues on this film. Okay,
Oh,
one of
okay.
the things that I focused on heavily, as many first time filmmakers do, was I focused massively on the image and working with the director of photography for the camera moves and the lighting and all of this sort of stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What I kind of did with the sound department was, they'd been trained the same as me and everybody else in the class, and I kind of trusted them to get on with the job. um, Apparently there was some issue. This was all done on a Nagra
Right.
recording
Yes, I
device.
remember Nagras.
Yeah. Apparently there were some battery issues, even though they had loads of money for um, battery supplies and consumables and things of that nature. When I got into the post production, a lot of the sound was pretty terrible.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
And one of the things that people notice about this film is there is some pretty awful looping in it in places, um, and the sound design is not great. I haven't gone to the level of sound detail in this that I have with films that I've done since. So
Yeah.
um, a lot of Rod's music, which again, considering what he was working with, and it is obviously very of the time, the music. I think he did a fantastic job, and it did cover a lot of audio mistakes that we had, which again, like you said, it is largely a dialogue heavy piece of drama anyway, or whatever. Um, yeah, I did have some problems with audio on this, and sound on this in general. um the editing process, what happened there was, shortly after I graduated, I managed to get an internship at Chapman Leonard Studios, and I worked for them, basically prepping camera equipment for shoots, and
Oh, okay.
working, cleaning lenses and cameras that were returned after shoots and things of that nature, which was very good experience. And some of the guys I worked with there, one of the things they had was they had an Avid system, which of course at the time was a
Oh,
big deal.
okay.
So
It was a very big deal,
so I
yes.
had my film processed and color timed at Continental Labs, and then the actual edit decision list was created in an Avid system, which I had a guy who I worked with there called Hector Lopez work as my editor, but he was very much, he was controlling the system and pretty much let me say, I need a shot, I need this shot here, that shot, bearing in mind that there wasn't a massive amount of footage in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah,
um
yeah,
so yeah, so that process was still quite new at the time, and I know we used Pro Tools, which again was quite new at the time for some of the sound, but the,
yeah,
the the finished product, I was not, I was happy with Rod's score and whatever, but the sound in general, I was not particularly happy with, and that's one of the things I notice if I ever watch it now is some of the sound in it is poor, and some of the looping on it is not very good. But again, it was part of the learning process, right? So
yeah. I have to say, I didn't really notice any sort of those kind of problems. Maybe because I'm just watching it on YouTube on my monitor,
right, right.
but it was there was nothing grievous, nothing that really jumped out to me. So I think it's just a case of you noticing it more than other people because you know what the problems are and you've watched it every which way.
Yeah, yeah. And as I said,
Yeah.
the writer saw it, and it was a very different take on it. So even though it was
Mm,
absolutely, it was 90% her script and etc., but it was a very different vision and a very different take on it. And it was quite funny because about a year or two later, a year or so later, she adapted the short story, or the short script, into a stage play, like a full hour long stage play of this, which I went to see. And oh
yeah.
my God, I mean, everything, it couldn't have been more chalk and cheese. It was so weird to see
Right.
something that was the same story and the same characters saying a lot of the same stuff, but totally different. I mean, I remember my poster for this, which I really should try and get on the YouTube at some point. It's
Yeah.
basically a fairly dark poster with a map of Florida and the two characters and the car headlights. And it says, my tagline for it was things to avoid on a road trip: rain, roadkill, relationships, dot, 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 right? Where her one
Right.
was a really bright, sort of neon colored um, poster where they were wearing Hawaiian and Disney shirts and whatever. And it said, Overpass, a comedy about two guys, a girl, and a gun.
Oh,
And it was
right.
so different. I mean, it was quite interesting. Um, but yeah, I did of course go and see the play she had adapted of it. Very different casting and everything, and a very different wardrobe, and yeah, a very different look all round. But very entertaining, very entertaining indeed. So yeah.
So, just one question to sort of wrap
Yeah, we
up.
need to get onto your film, I feel.
I know this, but um, so once you'd finished it and the writer had seen it, what did you do with it?
Right. Well, probably not enough in hindsight.
Mm,
I mean, I entered it into the Florida Film Festival, and weirdly, I didn't attend the screening because I was actually, well, please, I was directing something else when the screening
ooh,
was going on, so I couldn't actually make
what
it.
were you? What were you
This is
directing?
this is a whole nother big story, but essentially, I did direct a feature film, which sadly never saw the light of day, and that wasn't to do with me. That was to do with the fact that I didn't own it, and the producers decided not to finish it. But that's
Oh,
another
okay.
long
Oh,
story.
okay.
Um,
Ooh, I can't wait to hear that
and I was
story.
directing that at the time that this was screened. But it went into the Florida Film Festival, and what I had done at the time was, oh God, it shows how old it is and how old I am. Um, I had VHS copies of it produced for all the cast and crew. So I
Yes.
had a massive batch of them, all with proper covers and everything made,
Yeah.
to give everyone. But to be honest, did I do a lot with it? Not really. I entered it into a few festivals. The feedback was often that it was too long for many festivals.
Yeah.
Because it's pushing, 17 minutes. So it's a 20-minute slot where they can normally get maybe two films in that
Yeah.
slot. So that was something I learned from it, certainly. And, did I expect it to sort of be something that would do well as my first feature? Honestly, no. For me, it was very much a let's learn my craft, let's have a go at doing this. Obviously, it's still the most expensive film that I've made to date, because everything I've made since has been less than £1,000. Shot over a day or two max. This one,
Yeah.
obviously, I had the luxury of some pre-production time. I had the luxury of a large crew, but
Yeah.
it was expensive not just because of that. It was expensive because obviously I had to get this process developed, color timed, transferred, and I had to buy the film stock in the first place, and that stuff's expensive. Plus, obviously,
Yeah.
as opposed to maybe 10 or 15 mouths to feed, which I've done on my other short films, I had 30 plus mouths to feed on this film. So, between the two things, this was the highest budget film. It probably costed somewhere in the region of about, I don't know, maybe three grand overall.
Oh,
That's
okay.
dollars, so
Yeah.
two just over £2,000, which was obviously back then as well. So back in '99, but yeah, I haven't obviously worked with that bigger budget or that big. Well, I have worked with that bigger crew since, because when I did this feature film, I had a massive crew. But as I said,
Mm,
that never
that's
saw
another
that.
story.
Yeah, that's another story, and that never saw the light of day, sadly. So
Yeah.
that was other lessons learned. So yes, Simon. So please tell me about firepower.
Well, what would you like to know?
Well, first of all, yeah, very interesting. Can you give me a little bit of, first of all, like I did, I waffled on about the backstory that sort of led up to this. Can you tell me about the genesis of this project, why you decided to do it, how you came up with it, and sort of what led to what is now the film?
Okay. Well, after I finished Panico, my goal was to direct a short film, but I didn't want to jump into it straight away. I just wanted to get experience and work on other people's films, and also at the time I wasn't working, so I needed to, you know, find some money. And so I worked on a lot of other productions, and as I was doing that, I was sort of, thinking of ideas of what I could do, um, and I remember one night having this dream where I saw two men sitting at a table, and it was at a table with a light over them, like an old, like a one of those old lampshades with a bulb, very sort of film noir,
Hmm.
and just blackness around them, and they're playing Russian roulette, and that's sort of where the idea came from. And I sort of I sort of wrote down a script. Now, at the time, I felt I wasn't very good at dialogue. I mean, back in '99, Tarantino was all the rage, and
Hmm.
so every short film that was being made, all had to do the Tarantino thing. And if it wasn't the Tarantino thing, they were doing the lock, stock, and two smoking barrels thing.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to do that because I knew I was doing like a crime thriller, and I felt that if I write dialogue for it, it would be very cliched, Oi, what you doing? Ooh, that kind of stuff. Um, and also, of course, it would mean that I wouldn't have to worry about sync sound, because at the time I had no idea how I was going to do it,
Yeah.
because I couldn't afford 35 mil or 16 mil, because I'd worked on all these productions, and you find out how much they're spending on it, and I could never have raised that kind of money, because it was similar to how much money you spent on your short film.
Yeah.
There's no way I was going to find $3,000 or anything like that. And so,
Yeah, I spent a long time paying it off, I might add. I kind of maxed out the credit card. So,
yeah,
as a parents gave me a little bit of money to help me, but obviously I had to find most of it. So, yeah. So I hear you.
yes, yeah. So, early '99, I worked on a few productions that I actually got paid for. So I put that money aside, and I decided to sort of jump in and make my first film. Now, for me, this was going to be a test of whether, see, I could direct or not, if I could make a film, because at the end of the day, I was very happy working on set, the most part. As I discussed,
see the previous podcast. Yeah.
well, previous two podcasts. You know, working on set, it's the best of times or it's the worst of times. And so I'd set a date to do the shoot, and then I started working on Cold Fish. So I was working on Cold Fish during the week, and then I would film this at the weekend. And it was probably the best thing I could do, because I didn't have to concentrate on the film. I didn't have to sort of go, you know, get obsessed with what I was doing with the film at the weekend, because I was working during the week.
Yeah, and you do get it, or at least I find I do. I'm sure you find this when you're working on a project. Do you find that it's you know, if it's yours, if it's something you're making, do you find that you literally sort of think about it all of the time? Yeah,
Of
yeah,
course. Yeah.
and you should.
Of
I
course
believe
do.
you should. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, especially when I'm writing the script, it's always sort of there. And, you know, you sort of, you think of what people are going to say and scenarios and stuff. But then when you sit down to write it, can all change.
No, absolutely.
So, yeah, so I wrote a 3-page script, so no dialogue. And I decided to shoot it on Super 8, because I could get my hands on a Super 8 camera from a friend. And the cost of the film, I knew I could, you know, I could make it for that amount of money, because it was, I can't remember how many reels of Super 8 I bought, but I mean, at £10 a go, I could get, I think I got 8 reels.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you're shooting on film at the end of the day, and it has a very, you know, good and unique look. I mean, Super 8
Yeah,
has a very distinctive look, which you know, is one of the things that I think's really going for your film is the actual look of it. But also the thing that struck me with it. Sorry if I might be jumping ahead a bit with this, so maybe I should can this till later.
no,
But
no,
I was
no,
going to say,
go
one of the
ahead.
things that struck me very much with the film. I mean, I want you to continue talking about the story, etc. But one of the things I
Hmm.
thought was extremely good was the sound design. I think you did an
Yeah,
absolutely amazing job. You know what I didn't do with Overpass. You know, music aside, because as I said, I love what Rod did, and I'm not going to knock that. But you know, sound design wise, your film works amazingly well. And I'm not saying this just to sort of blow smoke up you or anything, but it was one of the things that struck me. It had its, you know, I knew from the get go that it was Super 8 because of the look of it. But
yeah,
you know what struck me, apart from visually, was the fact that you'd gone to a massive level of detail on sound design, considering there was no dialogue as such. And you know, it's that old argument, isn't it, about sound is 50% of the experience, because
yes,
everybody gets wound up about it being a visual medium, but it's an audio visual medium. And you know, you've got the three elements to sound, you know, dialogue, sound effects, and music, and in this case, you know, you really worked on the sound effects, massively so. So that's what struck me. But anyway, sorry, carry on about the
no,
story and the
it's fine.
genesis
I'll
and
talk
whatever.
about this, the sound design of it, because a lot. So I knew there would be no dialogue, but I had a sound recordist there on set recording the Atmos tracks, so getting all the footsteps, and then we did a lot of like the sound design there. We did Foley work,
Brilliant.
So like things like punches and stuff, we had like sandbags that we'd drop, and you get the sound of the gun scraping across the floor and stuff. And I actually had two soundtracks done, because the first soundtrack was done by the editor. I was trying to think what his name is. Let me just quickly look this up. Mark Grant, who did the editing for me. He originally did the sound design for it as well, coupled with the music, and worked really well. And then I worked with a sound designer called James Berkeley years later, and he loved the film. And he said, "Look, can I have a go at this? Can I, because I think I can do something with it." I said, "Yeah, go ahead."
Oh, right. So he kind of remastered it, did he?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
But kudos to your editor as well, because I think it's quite neatly and tightly edited, and it's 10 minutes long, and
yeah.
But it works. So I don't know how involved you were in the editing process with this, but
well, I'd go, because he lived on like right on the outskirts of London. I mean, on the other side, the M25. So
wow, okay,
I would have to drive up there on weekends, and he'd show me what he'd done, and I sort of give him notes, and then he'd just go back and do it. So yeah, but it was Mark I'd worked with on his own films. He was a filmmaker himself, and he had Premiere.
Oh, right. So is it? Yeah. In fact, I noticed you had the Adobe logo at the end.
Yes.
So yeah, it was done in Premiere, was it? Okay.
It was done in Premiere.
All right.
It was, I have to say, shooting on Super 8. Was the Tri-X brand, and I was shooting in low light. Now I did have a light meter, but I knew how low the lights were, and so I took the film to be processed, and then I had to take it straight to be telecined. So I never saw a frame. So all I knew was that I could have had like a big reel of black.
So you were bricking it.
No film. Yeah. Oh boy, was I bricking it until I took that mini DV tape round to the editors to have a look at.
Yeah.
And for such a relief to see there was actually something there. Okay, there was a couple of shots that I lost because it was just too dark.
Right.
But then, the effect when he gets knocked out and you see the lights.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a happy accident.
Oh, right. Okay.
That was a dark shot I couldn't use, but it was such a nice effect. I thought, I could use it for this.
Hey, you get happy accidents every once in a while. I get it. I mean, this is the thing again. Modern filmmakers don't know they're born with this, in the fact that you can just pop a card out of a camera and plug it into your MacBook, and straight away, you can see everything you've done, and it's like, what the fuck, like with Overpass. Absolutely, I was. I did actually was able to do a color timing of it after it was processed and stuff. But you have no idea whether these 10 reels of what you've got taped up and sent off have even exposed, or have been.
Wow, I don't know. I mean, looking at the lighting and everything you had there, I wouldn't have thought that would have been a problem.
Yeah, but I mean, it could have been fucked up.
It might have been, but that wouldn't have been from the lighting side. That would probably be more the processors.
Yeah, or the fact that the person who unbagged it or unreeled it might not have, might not have.
They might have opened it in the light.
Exactly. I mean, there were all sorts of things,
true.
But
I don't think there was a fear that all you were going to get was a reel of black.
No. It all came out. In fact, I pretty much had to use all of it because I shot it that tightly. There was one shot I decided not to use, which was storyboarded and whatever, and I filmed it, but I took it out because I thought it wasn't so effective. Was I had a shot of Max taking the Beretta, the pistol, out of his backpack.
Okay.
But I sort of thought to myself, well, that kind of gives it away before we want to be with the character. So for the shock. So that was the only thing that ended up on the cutting room floor, in inverted commas. But
I mean, I shot this in such a way that there, apart from the couple of shots that didn't expose, had to use everything.
Right.
You know, there was no room for there was no sort of leeway at all. It's literally I just shot it.
But it looks good.
I'm
It looks good.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you know.
Well, it's a very small crew, and I was my own DOP because I knew that because I was shooting it over. We shot it over 2 weekends, 4 nights in total, and they were only half nights, so we always finished about 10 or 11 o'clock. And I had access to this warehouse, which I used again for another film for Post-its, and you could
Yes.
just see how much it had changed from the time between those two films.
Yeah.
I mean, it was 6 years between those films, and they filled it full of shelving. When we filmed in there for Firepower, it was all sort of it's where they used to keep all the vans and machinery and stuff.
So did you know the people then that own that warehouse?
Well, my dad was a caretaker.
Oh, I see.
For an engineering company called Matt Nicholas, and we lived there. So yeah, we had access to those facilities all the time we were living there. I mean, I used the offices there. I'd used it for blocks. They were their offices. So yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Interestingly, I need a warehouse and an office for the next thing I want to do. But hey, we'll take that offline. But so tell me more. Tell me more.
Yes, certainly. Well, the casting. I didn't want to go through a massive casting because I'd worked with people. A friend of mine, Chris Watson. He did a film, and he showed me his bags of CVs that he got through the post, and he was saying that Royal Mail had stopped delivering because they were just delivering bags full of CVs.
Bloody hell! Right.
Yeah. He put a posting up on PCR.
Right.
And he got a lot of response. But he let me look through them just to find the leading actor. And I came up with 3 picks. And one of the guys had worked with on another short film called Two Sides, which was this World War I film that we shot in Sussex. Oh, great place! It's this place is used as a location loads of times, and the old boy who runs it, who owns the land, he's a big war fanatic. He has tanks and jeeps and everything, and I remember him driving over the hill once in a jeep, stopping by us. We were walking along this sort of country road, and he was saying, you know, when I was telling Steven Spielberg about, this and that, and he was filming, and I said, oh, Steven Spielberg, yeah, what did he film here? And he said, Empire of the Sun.
Oh, right.
And you know the bit when they're at the beginning where they're at the big party, and he throws the glider, and it flies over that hill, or that little, and you see the Japanese army, or no, it's the Chinese army, isn't it? Because it's Hong Kong. That was filmed there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and there's been other films filmed there as well. And unfortunately, that actor was not available. So my second choice was David Hastings. And I spoke to him on the phone, and he was really enthusiastic and stuff. And he had worked on First Night, the Richard Gere film.
Yeah, with Sean Connery, yes.
With Sean Connery.
Yes.
Excalibur.
Pull it out of the stone. Yes.
So, yeah, and David was great. He was very enthusiastic. He actually, on the first day of the shoot, the call time was 6 p.m. And he actually turned up at the house at 6 a.m.
Ah, okay.
And he didn't realize his mistake until he got there. And he told me later, because he didn't knock at the door, he went back home. I was like, because usually call times are like 6 a.m. or something like that. So,
yeah.
But yeah, he was just really enthusiastic to do it.
Yeah. Military time works good.
So the other main actor in it, Andrew Lorden.
Yep.
I met him, I what it was is every Thursday night I'd go to the Panico evening, you know, and meet up with people, and once you're usually there for an hour, and then you go on and you drink somewhere else, and we ended up at the arcade on Warren Street, and of course this was leading up to Phantom Menace, and so at that time we had high hopes at episode 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whole other podcast. Yes, indeed.
Exactly. So they had the Star Wars arcade game, the one where you can do the X-wing attack on the Death Star, and then it was you were a snow speeder, and then the final one was the speeder bike on Endor.
Oh, right. Okay.
I think it was by Atari.
I seem to remember that. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And there was this big guy playing it, and he was wearing a Star Wars crew jacket that said Episode 1 on it. So we were like, wow.
I have one of those. Yes.
You
yeah.
do.
Anyway.
So we all got talking to him, and you know, it was a very affable guy, and you know, he was talking about the film and you know his experience, and we were all lapping it up because we're all big Star Wars fans, and we're sort of new to filmmaking and stuff, and we just, you know, we didn't realize what a flop it was going to be. Well, not a flop, but you know, it wasn't going to be the film that we hoped it would be. And I remember he left, and I thought, damn, he'd be good in my film. So I had to sort of build the courage up and run after him. And I sort of ran up to him, and he goes, oh, could you read my script? I'm doing a short film. I think you'd be great for it. And he sort of, you know, took it, and I wrote my number on there, and sort of, I thought, okay. And then I sort of walked away and went, oh man, you know, at least I can say I did it. I sort of went up to somebody and said, would you be in my film? And then he phoned 2 days later, and he was really enthusiastic. And yeah, it sort of took me about 15 years. I knew him for 15 years after that.
Right. Yeah.
Could shake him.
No, absolutely. I mean, I know obviously Andrew and know of his story and whatever, but what about the other guy, Hastings guy? Has he gone on to do anything since then, just out of interest?
Well, this is the thing. After I finished the film, I tried to get in touch with him a couple of years later, because when I did the film Blocked, I actually wanted to do it as kind of like a Firepower reunion.
Okay.
And I could not find David at all. I kept in touch with him a short while after the film, but
is he on IMDb or anything? Do we know if he's?
He is, but I'm looking at him now. I'm afraid his credits sort of end at 2003. So.
Oh, right.
I don't know.
Maybe he went and got a life, hey?
Well, this has happened to a lot of people, so yeah. But the other actors who appear in it, well, James Kay is my cousin.
Oh, well, your two thugs that you had in it. Your two heavies. So,
yeah. So he's my cousin. He's, you know, he was in the army and he's a bouncer, and he's, you know, he's actually lived that. You know, he used to work at the door at Bagley's,
right,
in King's Cross. So there was, God, man, the stories he told me about being at the door there. In the end, it was just getting too dangerous. I mean, people were being shot.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, he sort of started being a bouncer at the doors in Banbury.
Right.
Reg was an actor and sound recordist, and he was actually he was my sort of film partner at Panico. We did the one take film.
The one you talked about, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And
Reg actually had sort of acted in a few films, and he was in Gorillas in the Mist. But the thing is, you don't really see his face. He's the shadow on the wall that kills Sigourney Weaver.
Oh, wow.
You know, you see the machete come down, and that's him.
Okay.
And I think he worked in Scandal as well.
Okay, cool.
So then I think there's a lot of British actors who did.
Yeah. I mean, your actors. I thought they in this film they all worked.
Mm,
The
yeah.
cast was fine. What did you have in terms of crew?
Well, crew wise, I had Chris Fly come on to do a couple of. I think he did like 2 nights of first ADing, and after that, it was clear that it just didn't need it. Um, so I had Reg sort of doubling up as actor and sound recordist, and then I had a couple of friends of mine help me out. That would be Paul O'Connell and Kevin Masterson. They're two friends from school who, they were sort of following my adventures in filmmaking and sort of wanted to give it a go. And after trying it once, that was it.
Oh, they figured it out. Yeah, it's not
I
for
think
everyone.
Paul just went outside and smoked lots of cigarettes just to keep the continuity of the cigarettes up.
Right.
I remember that was his chief job, was smoking, which he does anyway, so he's quite happy with that.
Fair enough. What did you do? I mean, you mentioned sound. What did you record on for your sound?
I think we recorded onto mini disc.
Mm-hmm.
So I borrowed some sound equipment from a friend of mine, as well as borrowing the Super 8 camera.
Yeah, I know around that time, because obviously Nagra had been around for years, and I know that around that sort of late 90s there was sort of a transition over to DAT at the
Digital.
time, wasn't
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. That was what it was. It was DAT.
Yeah.
Yes, DAT. Yeah, it was DAT tapes, because I remember now, because I've still got those tapes. And yeah, as I said, we tried to record as much sound as possible because there was no dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't have to worry about sync sound and stuff. So and also the microphone could be wherever it wanted to be as long as it wasn't in shot.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, I mean, like I said, the fact that you sort of recorded those sounds and the atmos and whatever on set, I think really sort of paid off, because the sound design on it is really good, but it doesn't feel like something you just went and got out of some sort of
No,
generic sound library and stuck
no,
on the front. It actually
no.
it actually feels like the real props and whatever.
Well, I mean, the third piece of the puzzle that really helped sell the film was the music. Now, I have to say, I've been really lucky with the composers I've worked with, and Max Somerset was my first composer I worked with. Now, he was recommended to me by Reg. He knew him from the church he went to in Willesden, and Max would play the organ there every Sunday. Well, he told me it was an organ. It was more of an electronic organ. But the amazing thing that Max did was he sat down and he watched the film and he played the music to the film frame by frame.
Wow. Okay.
And so when we got the finished music cues, we'd have the timings for it as well. It wasn't like a sound file, but we'd have all the timings and stuff, and and it was a great score. It was just a really good score, and I worked with Max a couple more times afterwards, but his passions sort of turned another way. He became a magician.
All right. Okay.
It was something that he did it when he was a kid, and he was very good at, and he sort of fell back into it, and he actually has quite a good career at it. He's actually had quite a couple of TV shows. He had his own show on Sky One called Max Magic, and on CBBC there was a show called The Sorcerer's Apprentice, and he was the sorcerer.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he's a very sort of eccentric guy. He's he comes from money, and he's like wearing I did a TV pilot with him called Trick or Street, where he was wearing a sort of bright yellow suit top, blazer, and for his shows he has like a top hat and looking very like an old gent, That
An
kind of
old
sort of.
dapper man. Okay.
That's it. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, with his top hat. So yeah, so yeah, sort of getting it shown was kind of hard because of the sort of grainy nature of it. I think a lot of places didn't have it shown, but places I did get shown, it went really well.
Well, actually, a question about that before
Mhm.
obviously, as we know, one of the sort of traits, if you like, of Super 8 is the fact that 8mm film it is, but by definition, grainy. Okay, but um, did you? I mean, in the post production process and editing in Premiere and whatever, how much image manipulation did you do um, during that? Was there a lot of things done in post or changed in the grading of it or anything?
No,
No,
no. Well,
what you
the
see is
thing
what you
is,
get, literally. Yeah,
it is because back in '99, Premiere couldn't do half the things it can do now.
yeah. I mean, they hadn't developed
No,
After Effects or anything at that
no,
that
no.
early, but yeah,
I spoke to a few people about trying to reduce the grain, and they all came back with sort of it would take an ages to render, and nobody was willing to do that for free.
yeah. To be honest, I think the grain works for it, though. I actually
Mm,
think it works for what you were trying to. Well, what I think you were trying to get across with it. I think the aesthetic of it actually works quite well. To be perfectly
yeah,
honest.
yeah, it worked very well. But it came out of the fact of it was what I could afford.
Yes, no, of course, as it always does. Yeah, trust. Yeah, I know that. I know that feeling well. So when you have to self fund, yeah.
Yeah. But I do remember this one screen I had of it at the Lux Cinema,
Okay.
which is now a restaurant where they filmed a scene for that Ridley Scott film, The Counselor.
All right.
You know, the one where the bit where Brad Pitt's talking about being garroted
Oh
or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah, that's that bar there, and I had my film shown there. It was one of these nights where it was like an open mic night where you get in touch with them and you say, right, I have a film on the show, and they go, fine, just as long as it's not porn and it's not and we can show it then that's fine.
So was this before you had the sound redone? Then was this with the
Yes, this is with the original
and
sound.
and how did I mean? I'm almost. I'd be curious to see the previous version of it just to see how different it is with the different sound design. But
Mm,
because as I said, that's something I thought really really worked well on this.
yeah.
It was the
Well,
thing.
I just to say it. The screening went well. It went really well, and I was up against films that had funding, from the London Film Council.
Right, right.
Yeah. Was it like? Oh
Okay.
no, it was UK Film Council at the
UK
time.
Film Council. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Um,
I have to say, oh god, some of it was just really awful. There was yeah, just really awful, but it went down really well, and of course afterwards you have to come up and sort of do a Q&A with the audience. And I remember this one guy saying to me, your film, it's about suicide. I'm like, okay, right. You have to explain it to me. And it's like, well, you're taking the gun in your hand and you're putting it to your head and you're pulling the trigger and you don't. And it's like, well, no, that's not what it's about, mate. It's about a guy who's addicted to gambling and he's given a loaded gun. And what does he do? He sticks it to his head and he pulls the trigger. And then, he has every chance to walk away. That's not like he doesn't have to do it, but, more money falls onto the table and, he can't help himself.
yeah.
He has to go back. He has to
It is.
take the
It
risk.
is literally Russian roulette, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
So
Well, the other question I always get asked about is the double ending.
yeah, I kind of read that as there was the thing that he sort of imagined in his head, and then there was what actually happened. But I don't.
Yeah.
Was that what you were going for with that? That's
Oh
kind of
yeah,
okay.
no, there's it's
He like
well,
daydreams for a while or whatever, and then
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah,
right, yeah. But the thing was, I got the idea from watching Brazil.
right. Terry Gilliam, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yes, and yeah, what it was is because coming out of Panico and their connection to the Python
Oh, of
team,
course,
and
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
and Julian Doyle working on Brazil, it was kind of like a big influence on me at the time. And so yeah, I thought, I thought that would, be something interesting and different about the film. And it just works great. I mean, I haven't really sort of tried anything like that since, but it just seemed to fit into that story.
And what about? I mean, what else did you do? Much else with it in terms of screenings and festivals, or did you just sort of kind of crack on and do the next thing? I mean, what did you take out of it? I think.
Right. Well, what I took out of it was I had a screening of it at Panico and it went down really well. And that was the point when I went, okay, I can make films. I'm a
You've done
filmmaker.
it, absolutely.
I'd done it and I was good at it and I knew I was good at it now. And I thought, yeah, I'm now gonna go on and make more. I'm gonna try and do less. And what happened in '99 was I actually started working in a cinema because of because when you're under 25 with the doll, you have 6 months, and after those 6 months, you have to go on all kinds of courses and stuff, and
I know,
it's a
I've
real
been there.
pain in the ass. So
Yeah,
I found a job at the cinema
right.
in Bournemouth. So I worked there for a year, and in that time, I entered the film into quite a lot of film festivals, and it didn't get shown, and it was just and so it's just in the end it was for me it's a film that it just sort of proved to me that I can make films. And I as soon as YouTube came along, I put it up on YouTube, and in its new state with this new sort of sound design. But yeah, sort of I didn't make another short film until Good Cop Dead Cop, and that wasn't until sort of 2001 2002.
Yeah, it was only a
Because
couple of years later then. Yeah.
yeah, because working at the cinema sort of took up a lot of my time, and also things were changing. What with everybody going to mini DV,
Hmm.
so yeah, I did a TV pilot in between sort of those two short films, and which with Max Somerset, which was called Trickle Street, and we actually did film one trick with Sienna Miller before she was
Oh
famous.
wow, okay,
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
yeah, it was up on my YouTube channel for quite a while before I was asked to take it down by Max.
Right.
Yeah, but that's a different story.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, that was yeah, for me, as I say, Firepower was just my proving ground, just to see if I could do it.
Well, you did it. As I said, I
Mm.
thought it. I hadn't. I mean, again, a good thing with doing this is, it's making us. Well, it's weird. We've known each other a few years now, but we're finding out new stuff about each other as filmmakers.
Mm. Yeah,
Through the course of this, and I've seen quite a few of your short films, but I hadn't actually seen this one until today, and
yeah,
I thought it worked. As a first film, and as something shot on film, it worked really well. And as I said, the thing that really impressed me with it was, I thought the use of sound and the sound design that you'd gone through with this, really set it above, because the trouble with most first time filmmakers films, mine included, is
the
often the
sound.
production
Yeah,
sound, or the like you said, the foley, and the ADR, or any other sound design that's done, apart from the music.
Yeah.
often
Well, it was
often
one of those things
suffers.
yeah, it was one of those things that the films I did get to see that I'd worked on, you could see that because they were just concentrating too much on the image. Because I remember some of the shoots where they spent so much time on the lighting, and then when it came to the sound, it's like right, get in now, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as my production management teacher said, I still remember this. She said, "Look, often the audience might not notice a camera wobble or something too much, but if the sound is bad or pops for a second or whatever, we'll notice that way more."
Mm,
Ironically, I mean, okay, I know really it all needs to be good, but sound is definitely it's definitely 50% of the experience, and
yeah.
it's incredibly important to do it well or have it done well.
Yes.
So yeah,
And I think that's a good place to end
it
this.
is.
So
Yes.
it is. So Keith, how can people find
Well, if
you?
people want to see these films, they are available on YouTube. You simply have to type in British Isles, which is Eyles, as in my surname, and as I said, 6 short films are there for your viewing pleasure or not.
Yes, you can see Firepower and all the other short films I've made at independentrunnings.com and our YouTube channel, Independent Runnings. Also, you can follow this podcast on Facebook at Movie Heaven, Movie Hell. Also, we're on Twitter at Movie Heaven Hell. And if you're a fan of the show, please do leave us a rating on iTunes and also maybe leave us a review or two. So, well, thank you for sharing that with us, Keith.
Oh, and
And
likewise, very very
yeah.
interesting. If nothing else, if nobody else listens to it, I'm finding it interesting. So, and as I said, we've recorded our memoirs here for when we're rich and
Indeed.
famous. Obviously, yes. I'll see you next time.
Yes. See you at the movies.